All right. Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Chrissy from NGI, and I've got my team with me today, or most of my team with me today. I've got Laura Kelly and Samantha Menz with me. Welcome to Friday the 13th. We were just talking about how it's been an interesting week. We had the full moon. We've had a lot of interesting energy, right? The locusts, I think, are coming out, right?
Okay.
Time change.
On the way.
The time change, right? For those of us who do daylight savings time. And unless you've been living in a cave or under a rock somewhere, you've been paying attention to the SARS-2 virus, okay? So we're actually going to use the correct name for this virus. COVID-19 is the disease that it causes. It's not the name of the virus, okay? So we're a functional medicine practice over here at the Nutritional Genomics Institute. So it's one of the things that we want to make sure we get right is the nomenclature. Even our government is not using the correct terminology. The media is certainly not using the correct terminology. So we want to make sure that we use the names for things so that there's less confusion. Because that's one of the things that's happening, right? We've got lots of chaos and lots of panic and lots of excitement, right? Everybody's having a great week. Jazz hands, right? Because that's our new thing. We're either fist bumping. I'm not going to put my bum in the picture today, but we're either hip bumping or foot tapping or elbow bumping or jazz hands, hi, right? Right? So happy Friday, everybody, right?
Yes.
Yay.
Okay.
Happy Friday. Right? So whose kids are home from school today?
Not today. Mine starts Monday.
Okay. Well, I know Michelle's kids are home from school, and they're home from school for like the next 3 weeks. Here in Virginia, they just declared a state of emergency. And I know they did in Maryland. You guys are like on full lockdown, right?
Yes.
Yes. Governor's like, no entrada, like nada. You guys are on full lockdown. So in Virginia, they decided that we have a state of emergency, and in Chesterfield, where I live, they have closed the schools for cleaning today, which is super interesting. The teachers were supposed to go on strike on today, which is also kind of an interesting twist of events. So not that the whole world is interested in politics and my little map dot of the world, but I'm fully expecting that Chesterfield County will go on full closure as well, as will I think the rest of the country. I think people are kind of getting the hint that we need to go in some isolation, or we're trying to kind of have some euphemisms around these words. But the idea here is to flatten the curve, right? So you guys familiar with what that means to flatten the curve?
Yeah, I've done a lot of reading about that.
Yeah. So tell me what your perspective is on that, on what flattening the curve means.
So the idea around that is that we only have a certain amount of resources for individuals who are ill. So if we have a massive amount of people who are heading to hospitals, that there won't be enough resources for those people, and doctors will start to have to make decisions about who gets treatment and who doesn't, which then will spike the fatality rate. And that's what we've been seeing in Italy.
Mm-hmm. Right. So with epidemics and pandemics, so to begin with, if we have a large number of people that get sick, and so we're going to talk about in our presentation today something called the RO. But if there's a large RO or a high RO, basically how contagious something is, if it's transmitted very, very easily or very frequently, and it spreads very, very quickly, then we have a large spike in illnesses very quickly. And so if we have that, even if the disease itself isn't that deadly, if our mortality rate isn't that high, if there's such a large spike in people that need help, in this case respirators, because this causes acute respiratory syndrome, So if there's a lot of people that get sick really quickly, we're going to call this our disease care system instead of our healthcare system, because even though we supposedly have some of the best healthcare in the world, we don't have, that many ICU beds. We don't have that many respirators. And quite frankly, our beds were already full before this epidemic came to our shores. So we've got kind of a pickle here. And so, I think as much as the administration is kind of getting smacked around for this, I think people and our officials are doing what they should be doing. We're taking some pretty swift action. And so, we're not here to really talk about politics. I want to kind of keep that out of here. But I think that we are doing what we should be doing. We're taking pretty swift action because we're about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of that large spike. And if we can get people to actually stay away from large crowds, not go to concerts, not go to basketball games. Sorry guys, March Madness is closed. That's never happened. Disney World is closed. That's never happened. I mean, these are some pretty, quite frankly, scary times. I mean, one of the other things I want to talk about today is how do we talk to our children about these things? This is pretty unprecedented. And if we freak out, what do you think is going to happen to our kids? Right? Right? It's pretty scary, especially when they close schools. I mean, most kids are like, close school? Yay! Like they dream about the day that their school catches on fire or something. Like they're like lay in bed and like, oh gosh, how can we catch, can we bomb the school or something? I mean, they're kids that think about stuff like that, I mean, I know when we were young, we used to like pull, think about pulling the alarm bell or, that kind of stuff. And, how do we get out of school? I mean, those are the things that, some kids, are super psyched about not having to go to school. So depending on the age of your child, that we have to kind of think about those things. So let's kind of get started. So I'm gonna, we've got a short little presentation for you guys where we're kind of walk through a few things. But let's go ahead and do that. And of course, this part always takes a little time, so sorry about that. But we'll, because technology is always fun. But we'll go ahead and see. Hopefully, it won't take too long today. Of course, it does. There we go. All right. So. Again, there's been a lot of, I would say, confusion. I made a post yesterday. We don't know really where our sources are coming from. So, there's a lot of people that are either listening to the media. There's a lot of what seems to be on the ground sources that are coming out, either through, doctors that are coming, reporting through either from China or Italy, those kinds of things. And there seems to be two camps of people. There are people that are really, really panicking and really, really focused in on one stream of information. And then there are other people that are going, oh, this is no big deal. And so, we're here to try and give you the information, filter the information, and kind of give you what's in the middle. Okay, so that's really what our goal is today, is to help you sort of filter through all of that information and be a voice of reason and all of that, because there is a ton of information that's out there that's being bombarded at the public. So that's really what we're here to do today. So number one, which we've already kind of talked about, again, COVID-19 is the infectious disease caused by the virus. Okay, so again, the name of the virus is actually SARS-CoV-2. Okay, so this is again severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus number 2. We've had a SARS-1 again that came out around 2005, and so that is something that was pretty dangerous, pretty scary, and most of us do remember that particular virus. What's interesting about this particular virus, about the SARS-2 virus, is that there appears to be two different strains actually going around. So when we're looking at the genetics of this particular virus, so the more aggressive form of the virus we saw early on, and this is the one that came out in Wuhan. So this appears to have decreased to about 70% of the cases. And again, we do have some challenges with testing. So again, we're going to try and keep politics out of this conversation. But the testing kits are becoming more available in the US, which is a wonderful thing. But from what we do have in terms of our testing capabilities and what we are looking at, the more aggressive strain seems to be about 70%. And then the more less aggressive strain, which seems to be growing more rapidly in cases, which is on the rise, basically, currently makes up about 30% of the cases. So this is really interesting to kind of watch. One of the things that we'll talk, or that I want to mention here, is that when we have different strains of viruses going around, viruses are highly adaptable. This is why we have different flu strains every year, different flu vaccines every year. Viruses hijack our own DNA, and then they adapt it to their own process. So this is why viruses are so challenging to prevent and to treat. The other thing about this particular SARS virus is that it's something called a chimera. So chimeras basically have little bits and pieces of other viruses in them. This chimera has a little bit of HIV. It has a little bit of influenza. And of course, it has corona. So, you know, what's interesting in terms of treatment modalities, that's why we're using things like HIV drugs to try and treat this particular virus. That's also why we are able to use other types of antivirals to try and get at this. Word of caution, though, is that when we try and attack just one part of the virus, so imagine a ball, and it's got these little sticky things all over it, you know, like the pictures that they're showing. When you attack one part of something, then, and it's smart, and it has the ability to change, then it basically causes it to go, I think I'm going to mutate and adapt so that I don't have to deal with that part anymore. So this is something that, you know, we need to think about as scientists. We need to think about as, you know, people that are out there trying to work with this. Of course, if you have someone that's critically ill, if it's my grandma, if it's my parents, something like that, I'm going to throw everything I have at this. And that's just human nature. So, but, you know, as we look at, you know, clinical studies, if we look at these types of things, I think that we need to be, depending on our, you know, our really smart researchers, our experts who really understand how viruses act, you know, to be, you know, and depending upon them, and hopefully have them having our best interest in mind when looking at these types of viruses. You guys have any comments on that?
I was kind of surprising, and it might help us kind of understand why some people are impacted more than others.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's been you know, confusing, as why some people get a more significant disease than others.
Mm-hmm. So the study that you had mentioned in the last update that we did, Laura, you know, so they were talking about the ACE gene, right? The ACE2 gene, or the ACE deletion. So, you know, one of the things that they were talking about was that how, you know, in China, most of the men were smokers. Most of the, sorry, I'm rambling here a little bit, that, you know, that there may be a genetic component to why it was primarily men who were dying in Wuhan, or men that were dying in China. But that, you know, in the US, because we have such high obesity rates, because we have such high diabetes and renal conditions, those types of things, that we may not actually have that you know, sex disparity here in the US, that it would probably be lethal to both sexes just as equally, and that, you know, there was also a change in Caucasians to Asians. And so in genetics, we of course always tell, you know, our clinicians that we train, and our patients to know your population. And so when we're looking at this type of information, there are more Caucasians that have the ACE deletion than there are Asians. And so this is one of the reasons why we think we're seeing a higher mortality rate in Italy than we were in Asia. So this is something to be thoughtful about as we look at the precision medicine approach to dealing with either viral prevention or if you happen to actually get the COVID-19. And again, that's the infectious disease, not the virus itself. So that's actually when you have the cytokine storm issue, that's when you get the pneumonia, that's when you actually get very, very ill.
Would that also be part of the reason why people with more of the complications, the CVD and the cardiovascular type, issues are more at risk?
Correct. Correct. So one of the things that happens when you have vasoconstriction is that you're not able to get blood effectively or oxygenation effectively to your tissues throughout your body. And so, this is one of those things when they look at ozone, why it's effective, because we actually need to oxygenate the tissues to be able to effectively kill the virus or get our immune cells to the places where the virus is. So if you have hypoxia, if you are not able to effectively get oxygen into the proper tissues, then that's when you have issues, especially when we're dealing with your lungs filling up with fluid. So this is really, really problematic. So if you get to the point where you actually have COVID-19, then, caused by the SARS-2 virus, then, those comorbid conditions become particularly challenging. So
yeah,
of course,
back to needing the respirators and needing that equipment.
Correct. So flattening the curve, of course, is very important, which is why, of course, we're taking these measures to, close schools. We're taking these measures to, keep people at home, essentially to slow the transmission. We're not going to stop the transmission of this virus, people. We're going to slow the transmission so that we give our healthcare system the opportunity to kind of catch up. And prepare for this type of thing. So if we can, we're looking at like 80% of people recovering from this condition or from this virus, but that is if we are able to treat them. So, that is the thing that we're really looking at here. And so 20%, that's still kind of a scary number, but we're really looking at our immune compromised and we're looking at our elderly, and we're looking at those with comorbid conditions. So, if that applies to you, which is kind of what we're talking about here on this slide here. So if you have heart disease, if you have obesity, diabetes, kidney dysfunction, if you're over the age of 60, and baby boomers, I mean, these are, with us here, these are our parents. This is, and, a large portion of our population here, take extra precautions. If you don't have to travel, don't travel. This is something that you really should be heeding. You really should be paying attention to, and just stay home for a little while, because if you do happen to get, exposure to this, which at some point you likely will, let's have a hospital bed available for you in case you need it, in case your immune system isn't able to fight this the way that we would hope that it would be. So let's just take a little time. I mean, you can think of it as a 3-week staycation. Let's give our system, let's give our healthcare system a little bit of extra time to do that. And this can be a massive inconvenience for people who are not financially able to do so. And I know that our government is taking some steps to try and help those in that circumstance. in those circumstances. So let's talk about how it's transmitted. It is transmitted just like every other virus, okay? So coughing, sneezing, hard surfaces, doorknobs, all that kind of stuff. There are some reports that this stuff can last for a very, very long time on hard surfaces, okay? So this is why there's the mass, hysteria in terms of buying Clorox wipes, and again, not endorsing anybody here, but, hand sanitizer, those types of things. So unfortunately, there is evidence that this may be an airborne virus. So, talking about 6 to 10 feet away from another person who may have this condition. So, and of course, I'm sitting here touching my face and my nose. If you need help with those other precautions of hand washing, I'm holding my own hands, trying not to do that, but my nose is so itchy, because we're thinking about it. But in our first video on coronavirus, we talked about, singing the birthday song. Samantha used to work for the Department of Health here in Virginia. She had some wonderful suggestions last time on how to do that. And of course, my nose is itching so much right now. I have to itch my nose. That's the thing. It's allergy season here in Virginia as well as it is across most of the country. So in a little bit, we're going to talk about the differences between allergies, influenza, and coronavirus. All right, so what the heck is an RO? Okay, so this is something that a lot of people are going, I keep seeing this number, people keep talking about it, what does it mean? Okay, so this is basically the likelihood of catching the infection, okay? So if it's less than 1, so people that are, because all of a sudden, somebody who used to be a political expert is now a viral expert. Okay, there's lots of funny memes going around about this, but an RO, basically, if it's less than 1, the virus likely will fizzle. Okay, so it will run its course, but this is the contagibility. That's not a word, but I just made it a word. Okay, so it's how contagious is this virus? Okay, and so if it's less than 1, it's going to fizzle at some point, okay? And it's not something that we have to be super concerned about in terms of how much you need to stress about catching this. Now, you can have something that has a low RO number, but is super deadly. So, you still have to think about the thought process of that as well. So this SARS-2 virus has an RO of about 2 to 3. Okay, now we're early on in this pandemic, so we're not 100% sure about this number yet. We can't it's this number. But to put that in perspective, the influenza outbreak of 1918 had an RO of 1.8 and killed millions of people. So now that influenza outbreak, had a much higher mortality rate. So just to keep that in perspective as well. But that was very highly contagious. Now, we didn't wear masks and things like that with that outbreak. We didn't really think that that was a thing back then. Again, that was, 100 years ago. We weren't really up to date on, some of the things that we are now. And so we certainly weren't practicing social isolation we'll call it social isolation. We'll leave it at that. We'll use the euphemism. So, just to kind of put some framework on that. If you see this RO thing, that's what it means. Okay, it's how contagious the virus actually is. The other question I'm getting a lot is, what is the incubation period? So if I've been exposed to somebody, or if I had, I had a drink with so-and-so and 4 days later they got, they have a confirmation that they have coronavirus. Or, I went and played golf with somebody and, then I think they have the coronavirus. Or, somebody just traveled on a plane from Asia and, they probably have coronavirus. What is the incubation period? What do I have to worry about? How long do I have to stay away from this person? So the average here is 5 to 6 days is what the average is. All right. The longest reported time was 24 days. All right, this is a long time. That's almost a month, okay? So you can be walking around and shedding viral particles for 24 days and not have any symptoms whatsoever, okay? This is why they're closing schools, guys, okay? So children, we love them, they're amazing, but they're vectors, okay? A vector is basically someone who transmits disease. or something like a mosquito. It's also mosquito season now. It's getting warm outside. So we're having all kinds of fun stuff. So the best assumption that we can have, okay, is that if you think you have exposure, if you think that you're sick, you need to basically isolate yourself or stay away from others for up to 14 days, okay? Because the average is that you're going to likely be safe after about 2 weeks, okay? If you know that you've had an exposure, then you need to basically stay away or isolate yourself, or stay away or isolate the person for about 2 weeks, okay? So not fun. And another thought here, guys, is our elderly people, social isolation is pretty scary for them, okay? There's a lot of depression that comes along with that. So if you have the ability to, reach out to them via social media, call them, call them on the phone, send them a letter, write them notes, have your children write them notes. This is not, lock grandma in a hole somewhere and leave her there and drop her off, Meals on Wheels or Uber Eats at the front door. This can be a pretty scary time, when you're talking about, someone who's immunocompromised or someone who gets sick. This can be a lonely time. This can be a scary time. So make sure that you are, still reaching out and still having compassion during this time period. All right, so let's talk about symptoms, right? Since I was just rubbing my nose and doing that, right? So first things first, let's talk about allergy season, okay? Since everything is in bloom, okay? So if you're sneezing, you have an itchy nose, eyes or throat, runny nose or stuffy nose, if your eyes are watering and red and sad, this is probably allergies, okay? So if you walk into your local grocery store and you sneeze and everybody looks at you like you have the plague, I'm sorry, but you probably don't have SARS. You probably have ragweed, or you probably have pollen allergies, okay? So, do make sure that you are sneezing in your elbow. And for God's sakes, please do not reuse your tissues or napkins just in case, because remember, your incubation period is up to 14 days. So, if you're carrying around what my daughter lovingly calls a snot rag, if you're carrying those around in your purse or in your pocket, then this is not something you should be doing. Okay, you should dispose of this and get rid of it, and use a clean tissue or napkin for your nose. Okay, now. Influenza rates are through the roof, okay? In fact, I'm quite sure that influenza went through my house about 10 days ago. So you're gonna have a sore throat to start. That's going to be the very first thing that you get, okay? Is a sore, scratchy, itchy, annoying throat, okay? Because literally the virus is bombing the cells inside your throat, okay? That's where it lands, and it literally starts bombing those endothelial cells in your throat. Okay, so that's what I want you to imagine. That's what it feels like. And then when you start sloughing off those cells, your immune system is like, oh, wait, there's a problem. And you start sloughing them off. That's when you start getting that post-nasally drip sort of thing, and you start swallowing a lot. Yeah, feels good, right? That's a nice thought. Okay, but that's what you need to start thinking about. Okay, that's why you have a productive cough with influenza. Okay, and so and you're coughing and you cough stuff up. Okay, so then you get muscle aches, fatigue and weakness, chills and the sweats. You have lots of congestion. You feel like you're dying. You have the plague. You definitely have a fever. Okay, so this is influenza. Influenza has been around a long time. Okay, influenza is a badass. Okay, it is not fun to get influenza. All right, when you have influenza because it sucks. You're in bed, you feel miserable. Okay, now SARS. Okay, so you're going to have a fever, you're going to have a dry cough. Okay, you're not going to be hawking up lovely green or yellow stuff. Okay, for the most part. Okay, this is not what we're finding with SARS. Okay, and then in the advanced condition, so what most reports are saying is that you basically go from fever and kind of this dry cough, and then like overnight, it seems to basically you feel like you're drowning. Okay, so you basically have this experience where you really have a hard time getting a deep breath. Okay, and then you have the shortness of breath, shallow breathing, difficulty getting that full breath in. Okay, and that's one of those things. So I'm actually going to let Sam and Laura talk about this, because both of them have different kinds of experiences with experiencing that on different things. So I'm going to turn it over to you two for a second.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm echoing. So I actually have this experience where I get breath hunger sometimes, where you can't quite take a deep breath. And so one of the things they've talked about is actually checking yourself for that as sort of an advanced way of knowing if this is something that you've got going on. And so one of the things they say is to take a deep breath. If you can hold it for about 10 seconds without coughing or, really struggling, that's a really good sign. And so they're noticing that that's one of the main things that's starting to come out of it if you have the advanced piece of this. So I actually know what that feels like. So it helps to kind of have that idea of it. But I think if you're checking yourself somewhat regularly, if you do get some of these other signs and then you kind of are mindfully checking for it, that's a good way to know if you need to get moving and get to the hospital.
Yeah, absolutely. And then from my perspective, I've had asthma pretty much my entire life since I was about 2 years old. So this is a tricky time in general with allergies, with flu, because all of those things have set me off before and caused major asthma attacks. I mean, a couple years ago, I caught some kind of virus. It wasn't flu. We don't know what it was, but it landed me in the hospital for about 4 days. So to hear that this virus and this illness that it causes specifically targets the respiratory system can be really concerning for those with asthma. So my best advice is just be prepared. I know that I am on a prescription inhaler. I have a rescue inhaler. Avoid your triggers when possible. I know for me, certain foods cause more mucus production, which can then trigger my asthma as well. If you have a pulmonary specialist or a doctor, more often than not, if you have the diagnosis of asthma, insurance will cover at-home nebulizers, which have saved my life more than once. So just be prepared. Mm-hmm. Be prepared. Take good care of your little lungs.
Yeah. And so that's actually, the steroids along with IV vitamin C, those are some of the things that are actually being shown to be very helpful for the SARS or the COVID-19. Those are some of the things that, on the ground we're actually finding are really, really helpful. And those are some of the things that we do for other pulmonary conditions. Mm-hmm. One of the things, guys, when you take that deep breath, we listen for their crackles or rails. So if you can actually, and not everybody has a stethoscope, but, even if you have somebody just put their ear on your lungs or on your back or on your chest, you can often hear that sort of sounds like paper crunching. So if you were to take, you'd hear this. You hear this almost crunch. I hope that wasn't important, whatever was on my desk. But you hear this, let's turn the probably important. Let's see here. Gene Bite information for next week. So it's going to survive. Those are the kinds of things that you'll actually hear. You'll hear these crackles, or, we call them rails. So you'll hear the pop kind of sound in the lung. So that's really what you want to listen for. It's almost like it feels crunchy in there, and that's really what you want to be listening for. And you can almost feel it when you take that deep breath. Okay, so that's you can self-check for that. I don't want anybody to be constantly looking for that kind of thing, constantly thinking if you can't take a deep breath, you're gonna know it. Okay, so that's something that you guys understand that. When you can't get that full breath in, that's when you need to be calling your doctor. So that's another thing. Most doctors' offices are saying if you have a virus like this, an illness like this, they're telling you not to come in. They're saying don't come to the doctor's office. They want you to go straight to the hospital. because they don't want you bringing your virus to their office. So this can be a little bit concerning. So please call your doctor, talk to them about your symptoms. This is going to be a time that most patients are going to have to self-care more than they're used to, which is a little bit stressful. This is some time where you're going to, typically would depend on your doctor to guide you, which is one of the reasons that we're making some of these videos for you, so that you have a place to go. Obviously feel free to call us. NGI does, mostly virtual for the most part anyway. So we're here if you have questions about these things, but we're trying to put out information so that you have it available. So a couple of other things that are a little bit confusing about the SARS-2 virus. Some people are having sore throats and runny noses. Some people are having headaches. Some people are even having GI disturbances. So these things can obviously be associated with everything under the sun. But those are usually milder symptoms, okay? You're not typically gonna have that, with the, more advanced until you're having, massive problems. So, but the main thing that we're worried about here is if you're over 60, you have comorbid condition, basically heart disease, diabetes, those types of things, some other underlying medical condition, asthma, something like that, you have some other underlying medical condition, immunocompromised, of course, so mast cell folks, you guys really need to be careful with these kinds of things. Avoid your triggers. Very, very, very important. If you have that, if you have any of these issues, you are the person that really needs to think about self-isolating, okay? Wait until the curve flattens, wait until the medical system has the ability to handle having extra cases. That is really what we're trying to get across here, because the likelihood is that you will be able to be treated and survive the condition if the hospital system can handle you. Okay, so that is really what we're trying to get across here. And people that have immunodeficiency, you guys have been living this way for years anyway. You're pros at this, okay? So you know what to do. You know what to do. So, should we panic, right? So, there's no toilet paper on Amazon. Walmart stores are closing. Guys, we have Walmart closing. Like, what the actual is happening here? Okay, like there's nothing in the Walmart, so they're closing it. Hello? Seriously? Okay, this is a little bit extreme. Just a pinch. Okay, so what should we be stocking up on? Because, I mean, if you don't, I don't want to talk about people that the toilet paper and hand washing thing, like that's just next level for me. But what should we be stocking up on? How do we stay calm? What do we tell our kids? Who do we believe? So let's talk about this. So our kids, they're watching us. They're watching all of our reactions. If you're losing it and flipping out, your kids are going to too. Okay, this is really, really important, guys. Okay, so if you're causing mass hysteria and you're, thinking this is Illuminati stuff and all that kind of stuff, then your kids are too. And the point here is that the stress is going to decrease your immune system. Okay, so and they are going to remember, we're genetics people over here. This is epigenetic activation. You may be changing your epigenome for not only you, but every generation after you. Let's not forget about like the Dutch famine. We're still having implications of that genetically from all the way back then, okay? So keep in mind that we are imprinting upon our children. Okay, so please, 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 it's okay to express your worry, but make sure that you put a filter on that. Make sure that you are calm enough to put a filter on that. Okay, so especially when talking to your friends. If you want to talk to your husband or your best friend or whoever it is and cry and scream and throw a fit, go right ahead, but don't do it in front of your kids. Okay, Laura, you're a mama. What do you got to say here?
Yeah, and my kids they're kind of almost like tweens. Mm-hmm. So they're still fairly young, but also really interested in what's happening and interested in understanding it. And so, we definitely allow them to see what's happening and talk to them about it. But the big message, of course, is that, the adults are doing what they're supposed to do. The government is doing what it's supposed to do. Particularly even last night when we did watch our governor talk, we let them watch it. And the message to them was, this is what they're supposed to do. They're taking care of us, and it's going to make a big difference. So, I think allowing kids to have the right information, but then making sure that it's framed in a way that they still feel safe, and that, people are doing what they're supposed to make them, make everyone be okay is the big message.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, I think the message here, guys, is that, depending on the age of your child. So if you have really little kids, keeping the routine is really important. So, a lot of preschoolers, elementary school kids, they're used to getting, M&Ms or something cute if they, do a certain task. So, just exchange the task. Maybe the task is, okay, well, you get a reward for how many times you've washed your hands today. And you get a reward for singing the alphabet by how long you've washed your hands. Those kinds of things. So we can easily, insert some of the things. How many times did Susie touch her face today? Well, let's make that a game. They don't have to understand why, but they need to, this can be one of those things where it can, you can incorporate some of the things, the chores around the house, well, let's have a race. How many, here's a sanitizer wipe, try not to say the other word, the C wipe. Here's the sanitizer wipe, how many doorknobs can you clean in 5 minutes? Those are the types of things that, kids can participate in and still be helpful. And because they're home from school, schools are closed, parents are home and teleworking if they're able to. So, these are things where we want to spend time with our kids, still include them in what's happening, but also, have still some sort of structure in their day that's somewhat educational. Play board games. Have them help you with dinner. This is gonna, I was a stay-at-home mom for a decade. You need to, include these kids because a lot of parents have been working parents. They don't know what to do in terms of being a stay-at-home mom. This is a different kind of thing. Look up homesteading things. How to make your own soap, how to do different things with your children. Get arts and craftsy and just participate. If you trust that the other parents around you are taking the same kind of precautionary measures, have the kids over for play dates. If you trust that Sally across the street, if you know that her parents are also, being safe and clean and will keep their kid home if they're sick, then, I would encourage the kids to go outside and still play and have those play dates and do those types of things. If you have older kids, if you have teens, talk to them, okay? Maybe even text them. The older kids, they're angry. They're really upset. Their spring break plans got canceled. The lacrosse team they tried out for the whole season just got canceled. All of their whole life just basically got uprooted. Okay, so they're pissed off. They're mad, they don't understand, they think it's all BS, and they're kind of like, okay, great, I have online school, this is cool, I'm gonna get to go hang out with my friends and we're gonna party for 3 weeks. And the parents are kind of like, I'm not so sure about that. And so, there's this confusion and this anger with the teens. So there's other emotions going on. So please, please, please talk to your kids, depending on what ages they are. Make sure that you limit the media exposure. If you're watching the news all the time, it's kind of like when 9/11 happened, turn it off, okay? You don't need to have that on in the background. Don't, especially if your kids are, if they're just doing memes and funny stuff, great, that's fine. But, if you catch them watching, live stream of, a media stream or something, limit that. make sure that you're still paying attention. This isn't summer break. There's a lot of things going on, and ask them how their friends are. They may talk to you about their friends, whereas they wouldn't necessarily talk about themselves. So hug them, love them, play board games, cook dinner, have family dinner together. Not everybody does that anymore. So this is an opportunity to kind of get back to family time, and take some positives out of this, instead of maybe focusing on all of the negatives that are coming out of it. What to stock. So don't forget that we're a nutrition practice here. So stock up on frozen fruits and veggies and proteins, okay? So these are things, you should not be stocking up on cookies and Doritos and those kinds of things, which of course, that's what sold out first at all of the big box stores, along with toilet paper, of course. But the things. Don't think the power grid's going to go out, guys. I think that, the things that are going to be hard to find are the fresh fruits and vegetables. The other things are, things like organic rice and potatoes and onions. Those things have a long shelf life. Other non-perishables, so things like gluten-free pasta, those things are going to last forever. You're gonna have a hard time getting rid of those. So if you do have to shelter at home, for a couple of weeks at a time, then these are the things that you can sustain on. If you grow your own food, fantastic. But unfortunately, most things are sold out of stores. We were just talking about how Walmart is closed, and Amazon is backstocked. All of those things, even things like Thrive, are behind. I still would encourage you to order. But know that they will be delayed, maybe 5 to 7 days, but they will get your order shipped at some point. We don't, we may have, a national shortage on things, but they will refill them. We don't have a worldwide shortage on, chicken. It will come. So, things will come. And the other thing is, please Google how to make your own soap. Google how to make your own cleaners. There is no hand sanitizer left. There aren't much cleaning supplies left in stores. They will make more, but, this would be a good opportunity for you and maybe your children to, figure out how to have less of a carbon footprint on the planet by learning how to make some of these things. Okay, so that's what we have for you today. Oh no, sorry, I have one more thing. So what to take and what to do. So what has the most robust evidence? And we talked a little bit about this last time. So zinc lozenges. So zinc lozenges, they're pretty much sold out everywhere. But for most of our patients at NGI, they take zinc carnosine. But you can open up your capsules and kind of make a gargle with those if you're actually sick. Okay, so if you're zinc actually, like I was talking about the virus, it bombs the cells in the throat. If you gargle with this and then swallow it, it will have the same effect as the zinc lozenge. Vitamin D, it helps to prevent upper respiratory infections. Vitamin A and vitamin D, they're besties. Don't forget about that. You basically need both of them to activate the receptors in the body. Vitamin C can decrease the duration of viruses if you have started taking vitamin C before you get sick. Caveat here, guys, for oxalate people, people that have hyperoxaluria, or for people that are taking megadoses of vitamin C. Our vitamin C transporter really maxes out at about 1,000 milligrams, okay, per day. So we really don't want to overdo this here because we can induce diarrhea. We can basically deplete glutathione levels. So people that are taking high doses of vitamin C, be careful, especially if you start to feel bad taking high doses of vitamin C. So this is something that, it's a catch-22. For those that have the COVID-19 and that are experiencing what's called a cytokine storm, I'm purposely not talking about that because that is what the scary part is. If we do get to a point where we're having lots of cases like that in the US, we're not actually seeing that happening here. That has been happening in other places in the world, but that hasn't really started happening here. So we're not going to talk a lot about that. But the IV vitamin C, that is what is helpful for that. And so, the low dose vitamin C, I'm finding to be more effective as an or to decrease the duration of the virus in the current form that I think is going around the US, which is the milder form of the virus. Not to downplay anything at all, but I would rather not overdo it and cause more harm. Generally speaking, for those of you who know me, I take more of a graduated approach. There are also a lot of other recommendations out there that would not necessarily be safe for those either with autoimmune disease or other conditions. So please be careful with randomly taking herbals and other suggestions that are recommended with good measure from wonderful practitioners, but they don't take a precision medicine approach, okay? They may not be right for you, okay? The things that are listed here are safe for 99.99% of people. Okay, so these are good pretty much for everyone. There aren't many caveats here, and you notice here that I'm not giving dosages either. So this is something that I want you to be very careful with. If you have questions, please call us. So these are things I really, really want you to be cautious about. We're not prescribing in these videos here. Sleep. Make sure you sleep. These are robust evidence, okay? So we're talking about dozens and dozens of peer-reviewed journal articles. So sleep helps you prevent viral replication, okay? This is why if you get sick, go to bed, okay? Stay home and sleep. I'm not kidding. Go to bed. Other things that have a lot of good evidence, so not robust evidence, so not talking about dozens or hundreds of articles, but 10, 20 articles. So Pelargonium phyoides, okay, so that's really hard to say, Umca or V-Clear, okay. Also pretty sold out in most places. It is still on Fullscript. It's back in stock, also somewhat available on Amazon. So they're doing pretty well at getting this back in stock. Magnesium threonate, okay? The reason it's here is because everybody is pretty stressed and anxious, okay? This helps you sleep, and this helps to decrease adrenaline levels in the body. Theanine is also something that we use for anxiety, okay? So these last two, I would want you guys to check in with us. It's not 100% for everybody, but for most people, these things are really helpful. And no, alcohol is not the right answer, okay? So those of you going and stocking up on cases of wine or Tito's, this is not the right response. And I'm getting a call from my school district right now telling us most likely that they're closed for the next 2 weeks. So, all right, so that is what we have for you today. I want to make sure, yeah, so no more slides. And I think there was one other thing I wanted to say about things like, what was it, silver, Laura?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
About silver and that it's more of an antibiotic, almost like an antibacterial versus an antiviral.
Yeah. So, and it's really interesting. So there are a lot of things like garlic and silver and oregano. There's a lot of things that are out there that people are saying, oh yeah, this would be good to take. But if you think about that, if you take certain things that are antibacterial and you are decreasing your microbiome that is in balance, let's just say that your microbiome is in balance, and all of a sudden you are impairing your microbiome, don't we think that would be a problem? You might be decreasing your immune function. So, I want you guys to be really careful about what you're taking, why you're taking it, and really stick to what we know actually works. In terms of this, because a lot of people are like, hey, I really, really want to take something. The Umca or Umcalu, if you're looking at the studies, the Umca or the V-Clear, that is hands down probably my favorite thing to take. I just put a huge order in for that to have here at the office. But you basically take it 3 times a day. At the first sign of any sniffle, you take it throughout the duration of the illness, and it works for respiratory infections. So, I mean, that's really what we're talking about here, guys. So the other things, vitamin D, vitamin C, vitamin A, those things help with your immune function, okay, and fighting or preventing, the infection. So there's certain things that you need to take now to make sure that you prevent or decrease your risk of getting the condition. And then if you do actually, catch something, then, things to decrease that viral replication. So, and this is assuming that we have mild or flu-like conditions. If we get to the COVID-19 or the severe condition, then we've got something else to talk about. But for now, for the most part, for the larger part of the population, we are likely looking at a relatively mild condition, but, flattening the curve, staying, away from those large populations, those are the things that we are really wanting to do. And there, of course, is, I don't know if you guys can see that on my screen, but that was Chesterfield County Schools, making sure that we know that we have unprecedented times and likely closing for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So, all right, well, thank you everyone for joining us today at NGI. Stay well, stay safe, and please let us know if you have any questions at all. You can find us at nutritionalgenomics institute.com. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.